The topic today is how to become a consultative salesperson. What I'd like to do is talk to you first about what is not consultative selling, and that can kind of help us to have a frame of reference to look at. And so I want to look at what is product selling. To be honest with you, this is probably what the majority of salespeople out there do. I get encountered and sold by salespeople I get sold to a lot. Almost every salesperson that I interact with does product selling. Let me talk to you a little bit about what that is. Basically, I'm going to go through some characteristics of what product selling is. For each characteristic, I'll then look at the counterpart of what that is like on the consultative selling side. And just to kind of let you know the direction we're going here, the exact opposite of each characteristic, just about, the opposite is what equals consultative selling. So let's just take a look at what product selling is, and so this focuses more on talking about the product. So a salesperson, the main focus of what their sales pitch is centered around, and everything they talk about is around the product that they sell, also around the company they work for. So this is where, you know, a salesperson might be giving a presentation and it's structured around, this is the company I work for, this is where our offices is, this is the year we were founded in, here are the products we sell, this is what the products cost. It's really all centered around the product and the company. And the thing about that approach is that's a very all about me approach. My product, my company, me, me, me. And if you kind of compare that to a social interaction, you know, if you ever have gone to dinner or lunch with someone who only talked about themselves, then you might reflect on what that experience was. It might have been boring, you might not have been engaged, that person might not have taken steps forward in terms of building a bond with you in whatever type of relationship. You might have been kind of excited about ending that experience when someone's just all about me. So apply that to selling. Don't be a salesperson that is all about me. Product selling salespeople assume that every prospect needs the product that they sell. Yes, if you're a business owner or a salesperson, you probably have a great product. Either you do, or it's understandable for you to assume that your product is great. That greatness in your mind can make you think that everybody needs what you sell. And the reality is that a lot of prospects that are out there, they might not need it for different reasons. Either they just bought what you sold and they're locked up and good and don't need what you sell. So because a product selling salesperson thinks everybody needs their product, they try to sell to everybody. And it's not to say that this type of salesperson is walking down the street, walking up to everybody trying to sell, but to think about the prospects that they cross paths with, whether they're at a networking event, whether they're making calls, cold calls, whenever they're sending an email, on the phone, they're interacting in some way or another with a potential prospect, they're trying to sell the product. They are focused on selling products to prospects. This list will make sense when we look at the opposite of what I'm describing here, so bear with me on this. This person tries to sell the product at every step of the sales process. So unless you have a one-call close, instantaneous type of purchase, sale type of product, there's some sort of sales process. And the product selling salesperson will try to sell the product at every step. And it's not to say that at every step of the process, whether that's a cold call or an email or a meeting, an appointment, that they're always saying, are you ready to purchase? But they're coming at an angle of, I have this to sell, are you interested? And let me give you an example. And I'll show you some examples of some emails here in a minute, but to send an email of saying, I sell this service, I want to schedule a meeting to talk to you about if you need this service. Of course, you're trying to schedule a meeting, but the angle that you're coming from is you want to sell this and you want to know if the prospect is going to buy from you. So there's a different approach which doesn't try to sell the product at every step. When you're doing product selling, the salesperson does most of the talking. They're just, showing up and throwing up. They're talking all about their product and not getting a chance to really learn more about the prospect. The pitch centers around explanations and descriptions. So this is what when the salesperson is doing all the talking, they're explaining what the product does, and they think that the more they describe what they have to sell, the more interested you'll be. the more they talk about the features and how it works, the more they're going to sell. And so whether you agree with that or not, that's clearly product selling. They talk about the product in order to make the prospect interested. You cross paths and you're interacting in some way or another with a prospect. I want to make this prospect interested so that they purchase. So the only tool I'm going to use is to talk about the product. Again, product selling, right? They focus primarily on the salesperson focuses primarily on their own interests. So what are the salesperson's interests? Selling the product, making commissions, hitting targets, maybe, you could say not working real hard, or, having an easy job or whatever. But one of the biggest interests of a salesperson is making money, being successful, and hitting sales targets. And when you're doing product selling, you're primarily focused on those things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's not important to focus on hitting your targets, being competitive, working hard, and being driven by money. Those are all good things, but your prospect has interests as well. And so we'll talk about that a little bit with consultative selling. When you're doing product selling and you face an objection, the primary response is try to overcome it. So when let's say, for example, that you're doing product selling and you face the objection of I'm not interested. Well, your response there is to overcome that objection by making the prospect interested. So you said you're not interested. Well, let me describe the product more, right? That goes back to the explanations and the descriptions. Let me talk more about the product to try to get around this objection. So that's product selling. In a minute, we're going to go through line by line and compare that to consultative selling. What that's going to do is that's going to basically provide you the map. It's going to provide you the clarity as to what exactly consultative selling is, and it'll provide you the map that you can follow if that's something that you want to adopt. Let me give you some examples of product selling, though, so that you really understand what I'm talking about there. This is a quick call example. This is fictitious because I don't have the transcript from some of the cold calls that I've received. So I just kind of made this up from memory, but hello, Mrs. Prospect. This is John with Mary's Bookkeeping. How are you doing today? We provide bookkeeping, CPA, and tax services. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you to discuss your bookkeeping and tax needs. Are you available Tuesday morning? So the reason that this is what I composed for a product selling example is that we're talking about the company, we're talking about the services, and we're trying to schedule a meeting to sell our services. So it's a very product selling approach. Now I'm going to show you a couple of emails. These are actually word-for-word emails that I have received because I do have those to pull from. And I just want to show you how these are classified as product selling. Thanks for connecting. A lot of new things going on with my company, and I'd like to share them with you in the near future. We help business owners acquire financial freedom in their business. I welcome the opportunity to work with you. So why is this product selling? We're talking about the salesperson's coming at it from their own angle. It's all about me, talking about my product, my company, and I want to sell to you. Okay? Here's another example. Company XYZ specializes in accounting, financial services at affordable rates. We have CPAs, blah, 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 bookkeeping. We offer per hour. Take advantage of this promotion and whatnot. So why is this product selling? Again, talking about the services that they offer, wanting to sell the product, right? We're trying to sell the product in this message. Hey, I would like to introduce myself as part of company XYZ, a leader in data-driven marketing solutions. If you're looking to acquire new customers, and I'm just going to skip ahead, this salesperson lists out all of their services that they provide. So nothing more than a product selling message than actually listing out every service that you provide. I hope everything's going great with you, and thank you for connecting with me. I want to reach out to you. We provide payroll, HR for your. I want to ask you how you're handling payroll and HR. I'm sure you have everything taken care of, but if there's an opportunity for me to earn your business, I'd love to talk to you. So again, talking about the product, trying to sell the product. And let me just skip ahead. So those are examples of product selling. Again, I think that's what the majority of people out there do. Now, why do salespeople do this? Well, for one thing, it's more natural. Your natural instinct, you're motivated to sell your product, and you get paid when you sell your product, so your natural instinct is to go and sell your product. The other reason is that it's easier. This is an easier approach because you have all this knowledge in your head. And let me explain why. You have all this knowledge in your head about your product, so it's real easy for you just to turn on and, okay, when I'm talking to a prospect, whether in an email or a phone call, let me just talk about my product. And the reason why is because this is what we're basically trained to do. Think of yourself, if you're a salesperson, maybe you've gone through some new hire training, or if you're a business owner, you kind of put yourself through this training informally. But a new salesperson at a company might go through some new hire training, and that company is going to teach the salesperson, hey, this is the company you work for now. This is when we were founded. This is where we're located. This is what we do. These are the products you're going to be selling. This is what the products do and how everything works with the products. These are the different features you can sell and how they're priced. These are the benefits that the products offer. That's probably the best thing in this mix, is the benefits, and that gets thrown into a salesperson's head during like a week of new hire training. What all this knowledge does is it becomes the foundation of knowledge that that person uses when they're out there selling, and then that then becomes basically what that person relies on when they're talking to prospects. And so that impacts what they say when they introduce themselves, when they're making calls, emails, networking, company website, what they do present in presentations. So this is what drives someone into the product selling direction. Now let's look at what consultative selling is. So again, let's go line by line. With product selling, we focus on talking about the product. With consultative selling, we focus on talking about the prospect. So we shift. Instead of talking about this is the product I sell, we want to learn more about what's going on with the prospect. And because we're talking about the prospect, instead of it being all about me, my company, my product, it becomes all about the prospect. So now put yourself in a social situation where you were talking with someone and they were just extremely interested in you and your life, and they asked you questions and they listened, and you just sat back and talked about all the things you love, your hobbies, the movies you saw, your travel, and think about how you feel as being that person where it's all about you. It feels pretty good. Well, if you agree with that logic, use that knowledge to your benefit and make sales situations all about the prospect. Product selling assumes that every prospect needs the product you sell. I have a great product. You need this. Everybody needs this. I can't believe why everybody isn't trying to buy this from me. Well, with consultative selling, you know that not everybody fits well, and you kind of question, does this prospect need what I have to offer? So you're coming at it from an inquisitive direction, other than an assuming that somebody wants and needs what you have. Product selling, you try to sell the product to every prospect, because we know that not every prospect needs what we sell. With consultative selling, we don't try to talk prospects into wanting what we have. We spend time trying to find the prospects that need what we have, because we know that there are people out there that need what we have. What we sell offers value, and there are people that need the value that we have to offer. We just need to find those people. And if there's no one out there that needs the value that you offer, then you're in the wrong business, you're working for the wrong company, because there is a slice of the world out there that needs what you have to offer if you sell a legitimate product. With consultative selling, the salesperson focuses on selling products to prospects. Now, with consultative selling, you focus on providing solutions to the prospect's needs. With product selling, you try to sell the product at every sales process step. With consultative selling, you're more focused on guiding the prospect to the next step of the process. So you're more focused on selling the next step of the process versus selling the product at every step. With product selling, the salesperson does most of the talking. Consultative selling, the prospect does most of the talking, or they do an equal amount of talking. So the way that ends up happening is you're asking a lot of questions, and that's when you're making things all about the prospect and you're focusing the conversation on them. The way you do that is by asking questions, and the way that you learn if the prospect needs what you have to offer is by asking good questions, and that's how the prospect ends up doing most or an equal amount of talking. Product selling pitch centers around explanations and descriptions. The consultative selling pitch centers around good questions. Product selling talks about the product to make the prospect interested. Consultative selling talks about benefits, problems, ROI, client examples to make the prospect interested. Product selling focuses on the salesperson's interests, like closing the sale, making money. Consultative selling focuses on the prospect's interests. Now again, I said I'm not discounting the need to focus on your targets and your making money, but your prospect interests are to improve their life, improve their business, make more money, save costs, make good purchasing decisions. I personally believe that you can be an ethical salesperson and still be and focus on selling products to prospects that need and fit well with what you have to offer, and still be an extremely successful salesperson. If you look at the far extreme of that, it would be to close the sale just for the purpose of making money and hitting your target, and by selling something to someone that they don't need what you're selling. You're talking them into buying something that they don't need. Not only is that not ethical, but it's probably not actually a good business decision. Let's just look at on the big scale. Let's say you sell a very expensive computer software. To sell a piece of software to a company that doesn't really need it or fit well, that would not, you might close the deal, but that company is not going to utilize, or that's not going to be a good financial decision for them. So that's going to look back either at you as the salesperson or the company you work for negatively down the road. I personally believe lead with looking for, it's either balanced. Either lead with looking at the prospect's interest primarily, and then that will lead to your interest being met, or you do it equally. Definitely don't ignore the prospect's interests. And so when you're with product selling, you're trying to overcome all objections. With consultative selling, you're trying to redirect objections and maybe learn more about why the prospect has the objection. So that's consultative selling in a nutshell. Now I'll kind of provide more clarity around how you go down this path. Actually, let me stop by just kind of pointing out one question you may have here is does the product that I sell fit better with product selling or consultative selling? And the quick answer to that is I personally believe consultative selling fits almost with any product. Let me give you some examples. So of course, at the far end extreme, let's look at maybe a very complicated software piece of technology. And it would be very easy for you to say, okay, that definitely needs consultative selling because it's very complicated. There would have to be a lot of questions and discussion and whatever. That definitely needs consultative selling. Let me actually point out that there are plenty of people that sell very complex products that still do product selling, and I don't think they should, but they still do it. They still show up and, hey, this is the software that I sell, this is what the technology does, and it's all about me, and they're trying to close the sale. So just because you have a product that should be sold through consultative selling doesn't mean that everybody is, and I can guarantee you there's a lot of really bad software salespeople out there that are doing product selling. But let's look at the other end of the spectrum. So that's a very complex sale. But now let's look at something very simple. Let's take, for example, selling gym memberships to an exercise workout facility. Very simple product, right? This is where our weight room is. This is the sauna. This is the pool. Someone could walk in wanting a gym membership, and that could be a very easy product sell. Let me take you on a tour. These are the membership plans. Do you want to sign up? But that could be consultative selling. If you're the salesperson, you could say, hey, what brought you in here today? Do you currently belong to a gym? How often do you work out? What are some of your fitness goals? What are some of the reasons why you want to become healthier? When was the last time you tried to implement a workout regimen? What would be some impacts to your life if you were to achieve your fitness goals? So those are great questions. Those make it all about the prospect. Those questions give that gym salesperson great information. Now, if you fast forward to after the tour and when they're looking at the membership plans, that salesperson, not only have they used consultative selling to make the prospect more engaged and what all not only are there a lot of benefits, but now that salesperson has a lot of information that they can use when they're talking about the pricing plans and trying to close a deal. There are some cases where maybe you might like have an impulse purchase that you might not want to do consultative selling. Let's say if you're selling something, let's say you're selling hot dogs at a baseball game. You might not want to sit there and talk to the person about, whether or not they should order a hot dog, an extremely unhealthy food item. You just might want to sell it. But technically you could, if someone were, asking you questions about the hot dogs you sell. I mean, being kind of fictional here, you could say, well, how often do you eat hot dogs? What kind of hot dogs do you normally get? What else, were you considering? If you didn't get a hot dog from me, what else here at the ballpark were you thinking about getting? What's your budget? I mean, you probably wouldn't do that selling hot dogs, but just for an exercise purpose, that would be more consultative selling, and you could apply it there. Auto sales is an example where you really kind of sometimes need someone to take that leap to purchase the car. So you might want to be cautious the amount of consultative selling you do with auto sales. But you could say, if someone comes into a dealership, what brought you in here today? What are you currently driving? Are you have any challenges with your vehicle? What's your budget that you want to stay within? What are some of the features you're interested in? What's the timeline that you were looking to work against? So definitely you could use consultative selling with really anything. So I just want to point that out. What I also want to point out is that consultative selling is not easy. I'm gonna provide you direction here today that makes it easier, but you still have to kind of use your brain a little bit. And the reason why it's not easy is because it involves asking a lot of questions, right? Being a consultant is about asking questions, whatever consulting role you're in. So you may be listening to this and say, well, I ask questions. Well, what you might not be asking the right question. But either way, it's not as easy to ask questions and good questions as it is to just talk about the product. The other thing is that there can be a lot of different types of customers. So let me give you an example. One of my sales, when I was a salesperson, one of my territories was selling to mid-market companies in all different industries. And so it was a bit difficult to become an expert in all these different industries. If you only sell to one industry and you've worked in your job for a while, you could become very knowledgeable about your industry, and consultative selling can be a little bit easier because you know what industry terminology to use and what key questions. But if you sell to a lot of different industries, it can be difficult to be an expert in all these different industries and know what to say, or know what to ask and whatnot. And it can also be difficult to have business conversations. So the last point in here I have is that it can be unclear what pain points to look for. And I want to give you an example here before we move on. I mentioned I was in inside sales in part of my career. One of the first sales training programs I went through was that we brought in a third-party sales training company, a company I respect tremendously. It was the first formal sales training I went through, and it was like a 2 or 3 day workshop. And one of the key principles that this company focuses on a lot is looking for pain. And I thought it was a really great concept, because, look for the pain, find the prospect's pain, and if you have something that can fix that, you can sell. And I love this concept. I thought, that's great. And so this is what actually kind of opened my eyes up to the whole world of sales training, and that it's not just about working hard and making a lot of calls and talking about your products. It's about kind of having really good messaging and good questions. So I really thought this was great stuff, and I went through this program. But let me tell you this: when that workshop was over, and then I went to my desk, and it was time to pick up the phone, I knew to look for pain, but I didn't know what pain to look for. And I was selling software at the time, and I sold all these different products. And the reality is now that I've started to kind of think more about pain, all of those different products solve different pain points. And when you talk about different selling those same products to different prospects, those different prospects might have different pain points as well. So it's understandable that that sales training company didn't, couldn't say, here are the pain points that you should look for. They just kind of said, you need to look for pain, and they kind of left it up to me. And then I became lost. And it's understandable that they didn't really fill that gap, because there's a lot of different pain points to look for, depending on the products you sell and the different prospects you sell to. So that's what can make consultative selling a bit tricky. And again, we're going to show you how to figure all of that out. So I went through sort of the approach that the majority of salespeople go through, where it's very all about me, my company, my products, my features. Let's kind of flip that upside down and look at another approach. And so it starts with taking the products and then thinking about, okay, not what the products do, but what do the products help my prospects to do, or my customers to do? What is the value that my products offer? And how do those products, what do they help to improve on the client side? So that's step one. Then stop to think about what pain points those products help to resolve. And let me give you a trick here. So if you thought about what the products do and the improvements that those products help to make, for each improvement, you can typically associate some sort of pain point. So if I go back to my gym membership example, the gym is going to help a person to become healthier and to lose weight, let's say. Well, that helps to solve a problem. It helps to solve lots of problems. It can help to solve problems of somebody not having any energy, not feeling well, not of having too many medical expenses from not being healthy, not having a good personal life. So for each benefit, there's usually a corresponding pain point, or more than one pain point. And so, but again, those pain points can be different, because let's say we're talking to a gym membership prospect that's someone that's overweight. That's then someone else that comes in looking for a gym membership is someone that is underweight or in top physical state, but they just need to go to the next level. Whatever the case, when you change prospects, the benefits and pain points start to change. The next step is to think about what we have qualify here, and that's sort of the category that we put our questions that we're asking. Because if I told you that I had some business conversations that weren't great, and and it was because I was asking very broad or random questions, trying to have business conversations. The reason why those weren't good questions is they really weren't qualifying or pre-qualifying questions specific to the area that I had something to offer. This is the trick to making business conversations and easy and achieving consultative selling, is having at the core of your pitch questions, and make those questions relevant to how you can help. And the way to build an optimum list of qualifying or pre-qualifying questions is look at the pain points that you help to fix. For each pain point, you could compose one or a couple probing questions. So if you help someone to, if the pain point was, if we go back to the gym membership, the pain point was you help someone that might have challenges with low energy. Then a good probing question for someone who might be overweight is, do you ever find yourself feeling like you just don't have any energy throughout the day? That's a great question. You're talking to someone, and if they say, yeah, I feel like that a lot. Oh, well, that's something that coming here on a daily basis will help you with, because you're gonna lose weight and you're gonna become healthier. So each pain point should have a corresponding qualifying question, and it's those qualifying questions that are going to, again, turn you into a consultative salesperson and going to help you to have, those are where you have business conversations. Interest. So I told you that the product salesperson talks about the product to build interest. The consultative salesperson will talk about ROI, how their product differs, previous examples, the benefits that the product has to offer, credibility, is to think about examples of other customers that you've helped in the past and objections. So composing responses to objections that help you to learn more and to get around those objections. So that is the process that you can go through step by step to become a consultative salesperson. And then if you go through that and organize your thoughts and either put it into a Word document or a spreadsheet, then that becomes your foundation of knowledge, and then that becomes everything that you rely on. And I will not deny that that is it gets you out of your comfort zone. It's more uncomfortable. This isn't as easy as just talking about the product that you sell. So it's an extra step. But when that becomes your foundation of knowledge, that impacts everything that you say when you're talking to prospects, and that includes everything when you're introducing yourself, when you're making calls, networking, and whatnot. So that is basically our path that we recommend for you to take to become a consultative salesperson. Now, again, like I said, you could go through those stages and organize your thoughts like in a spreadsheet or a Word document. SalesScripter, our product, will actually take you through that process step by step. So it's going to, kind of help you to build your, campaign for the different people that you sell to. So if we go back to our gym membership person, you could build a campaign for overweight, unhealthy individuals. Not to be disrespectful, but you could build a campaign for those that are extremely healthy but wanting to get to the next level. You could, and so you could have a campaign for married couples, families, a campaign for college students, and each of those campaigns could have different benefits and pain points and questions. But SalesScripter is going to take you through a process that helps you to outline all of those different benefits and pain points and questions. And like I said, you could do this in like a Word document. The benefit to SalesScripter is it just makes it all structured. And oh, by the way, as you're entering an answer into each of these boxes, your answers are then linking to a library of sales tools and documents. So I'm going to actually show you some examples of scripts and sales tools that help you to see what a conversation might look like as a consultative salesperson. Before I do that, I want to kind of go through sort of the sales process of a consultative salesperson, because it is different. Like I told you, a product selling person primarily might kind of be like pedal to the metal, always trying to just take a prospect as far as they can go until the prospect stops them, and then they break, and then they come back and try to push the prospect along. For example, on a cold call, they may just keep the prospect on the phone talking until the prospect stops them, or in their attempt to try to sell the product. And when the prospect stops them, then they try to work towards a callback or to an appointment. So in our process, the first step is an initial contact, and that could be a cold call. It could also be an inbound call where someone calls you. It could be exchanging emails. It could be meeting someone at an event. This initial contact is not just let me talk to this person as long as I can till they either buy or till they cut me off. This initial contact step is 2 to 5 minutes, and it's 80% of time on the prospect, 20% on you. So this is where we start to explain what consultative selling looks like. So you meet someone at a networking event. This is you talking about who you work for and the product you sell. It's about asking that other person questions, learning more about them. So the goals of this initial contact are to pre-qualify. So that's where I mentioned having good questions. You're asking them questions, to learn more about them, to gather some information. When you get to that 20% of time where you talk about you, this is where you build interest in getting them to not buy the product, but getting interest on their side to continue having a conversation with you. And you might schedule an appointment, which is the next step in our process. I mean, an appointment, you may say, well, I don't really go on appointments because I have a very simple product. An appointment could be just continuing the conversation there at that same time, or could be a quick phone call. It could be you sending over information, but it's the next step. And so if you were to kind of do a traditional appointment, this might be where you talk for 20 to 30 minutes. And notice here, it's 50% of the time on the prospect, 50% on you. So now we're able to talk about ourselves a little bit more, but we're still keeping about half the time on the prospect. So what that might look like, if you meet with someone for 30 minutes, you spend the first 15 minutes talking to them about continuing to ask them more questions than you had time to ask in the 2 to 5 minutes. So what you're trying to do is you're asking some pre-qualifying questions. You're asking them some hard qualifying questions, which are not just questions that determine, okay, how well does this person fit with what I need. Hard qualifying questions would be, okay, is this a deal for real? Like, someone might be coming to your car dealership and love your car and need a car, but if they have no job, then they're not a qualified prospect, meaning, no money to spend. So that's where you get into some hard qualifying questions. But again, the goal here is not to sell the product unless unless you can sell the product. But if there's another step in your process, then that's what the goal is to schedule a presentation, and that's where you might try to sell the product, give a presentation, and whatnot. So I just want to sort of outline that, because that's very critical to consultative selling, because as you can see here, the amount of attention on the prospect is a lot, and then it starts to balance out, and then you can make it more about you when it's time to sell the product. And again, the way that you do that is through asking good questions. If you don't have questions to ask, then you have no other choice but then to talk about your products, and that's where you fall into product selling. Now let me show you some examples of scripts and documents and examples of conversations. These are actually documents that are pulled out of SalesScripter. So this is a document that is a call script, and there's a few things I want to point out here, and I'm just going to kind of use my mouse so that you know what I'm looking at. But here's an introduction. I do want to point out, so like here's a prospect introduction. So, hello, Mrs. Prospect, this is Michael Halper from TechLight. Have I caught you in the middle of anything? So in our methodology, we recommend you ask, have I caught you in the middle of anything if you're doing phone prospecting. This, I think, reinforces the consultative selling angle, which is product selling. Now, I know there's a lot of salespeople out there that they don't agree with this. They think, don't ask them if they're available, because we know that because they're always busy and you're giving them an opportunity to give you an objection. What I would say to that is, yes, we can assume that they're busy. If they're extremely busy, then I'm not going to try to ask them. I'm not going to try to go into my consultative sales conversation and ask them questions if they're in the middle of a meeting. That's not going to be a good time. So this does confirm that they're at least not extremely busy, but just normal busy. And it also helps to buy you that window of 2 to 5 minutes. It's also very casual language, like, have I caught you in the middle of anything? It can be kind of disarming. So I think this does support sort of a consultative selling tone right out of the gate and can have a positive impact on your phone prospecting. Also, this can help to replace the cheesy question of, how are you doing today? I hate it when salespeople call me and say, how are you doing today? I know they don't care. They don't care how I'm doing. They're just trying to like artificially build rapport. And then I'm a nice guy, so I'm going to say, I'm fine. How are you? And then they're going to say, I'm pretty good. They might then even continue to tell me something about their day. And now we're like really starting to waste a lot of time, and I'm becoming a bit annoyed. So replace how are you doing with, have I caught you in the middle of anything? All right, moving on. So the product salesperson will then say something at the beginning of the call about the company they work for, what they sell, or what they do. We replace that with a value statement. You recall that what I told you, the thoughts you need to organize was the value that you offer. So you can take one of those benefits that you offer and create a value statement and then say that at the beginning of the call. So great. Hey, the reason why I'm reaching out to you is that we help businesses to improve the design, traffic, and conversion rates for their website, period. You just choose one of these. You don't have to say all of them. These documents use a lot of bullet points, so you can pick what you want. The thing about the product salesperson, they are always trying to sell the product, remember? So they would see this and they would say, well, that's not strong. That doesn't say what my product does, and how is that going to sell my product? and they would actually might see this as that I don't really understand why you're saying that. And what I told you is you're not trying to sell the product, you're trying to sell the conversation, or you're trying to sell the appointment. And at this point, actually, you're not trying to sell anything. You're just trying to establish the call. And what this statement does is it communicates the value that you have to offer. And it does kind of speak to the general angle an area that you have to impact, and it communicates a very consultative selling message. We help businesses to improve the design and traffic of their website. Whatever, you'd fill this in with your benefits. By the way, that's what SalesScripter does. SalesScripter extracts the benefits for this particular buyer, and it plugs it in here. So here's another thing that is a very consultative selling approach. I told you that a product salesperson assumes that the prospect needs what they have. So this is where you might hear someone say, oh, I have something, you got to take a look at it, you're going to love it, right? That's what product selling does. Here's what consultative selling does, because consultative selling does the opposite, which it's going to question whether or not the prospect needs what you have to offer, and that we do that through what we call a disqualify statement. So right after I say how I help, I'm going to say something like, hey, you know what, but I don't know if you guys are a good fit for what we do, so I was just calling with a question or two. I'm slightly taking away, it's a slight takeaway of the benefit that I offered. And then once I do a takeaway, then it's kind of like a push-pull effect, and then I'm going to jump into asking them a couple questions. But if I could ask you real quick, how do you feel about your current design of your website and layout? And then they might talk, and then I might follow up their answer with another question. They might give me a great answer here, and I go for the close just based on their answer to one question. I might ask them a couple questions, and we get. So what we're definitely doing here is the prospect is talking. They're giving me information, so I'm not just sitting there talking about my product. The goal here is to get an answer to a question that allows me to kind of give a reason to close them for meeting and talking more. If I don't get that, I can proceed to talking about some of the pain points that I help to fix. Okay, well, I don't know. It sounds like you guys are doing pretty good over there. When I talk with other businesses, they often mention that their website's not performing and producing the type of results they need. The conversion rate could be better. There's a need to increase website traffic. Are you saying you're good in all those areas, or do you have any of those concerns? And so we're basically sharing some of the problems that we're looking for as sort of a last attempt to try to get interest in continuing the conversation. Again, not interest in buying the product. I mean, if they want to buy the product, we're going to sell them the product. I mean, if for some reason somebody cuts off you in the middle of your consultative selling approach and says, we need it, let's move forward, you definitely jump on that. Here's a first appointment script, and the thing is a lot of salespeople, when they think of scripts, they think of inside sales or telemarketing or cold calling. The reality is I know firsthand that I used to work with companies where we would do telemarketing for their outside salespeople, and we would tee them up with meetings, and our phone salespeople would have good questions and schedule a lot of meetings, and then the outside salespeople would just like improvise. They felt like, oh, I have a meeting. This person agreed to meet with me, so they need what I sell. Again, this person obviously having a product selling mindset. This person needs what I sell because they agreed to meet with me. So I'm just going to walk in there and talk about my product, and it's gonna be a layup. I see that as a short-minded, not well-prepared salesperson. And what does that lead to? That leads to bad results. And those salespeople would often come back to us and complain that we scheduled them with poor qualified meetings. This was an outsourced basis, by the way. I provided appointment setting as a service, so these weren't my employees that were outside salespeople. These were clients of mine, just to clarify. But they would come back and complain, and the reality is that it wasn't a bad meeting. There was just still work left to do. I mean, you got to walk in there and still, be a consultative salesperson. And so here's an appointment script that kind of helps with that. But you see here are some of the pre-qualifying questions. These are similar. The same questions should be displayed here than what are on the call script. But see, the reason why is because the call script doesn't have, there's not enough time in the call to ask all of the pre-qualifying questions. So either what wasn't asked, or even going back and talking about some of those questions again, is what's good to do in an appointment when you're being a consultative salesperson. You could prod the prospect to see if they have any of the pain points that you help to resolve. Here's some example of those hard qualifying questions. These can all be found inside of SalesScripter. These hard qualifying questions never change because they're the same for everybody. You sell something completely different than what I sell, and we both can use these same questions. But there's need versus want questions, availability of funding, decision-making authority, level of competition questions. These, by the way, if you ask a handful of these, you're going to definitely look really professional, and you're essentially going to be a consultative salesperson. Consultative selling doesn't just stop with, or it doesn't only include cold calling and what you do when you go on your appointments. I showed you some examples of bad emails, and those emails were salespeople talking about their company, talking about their product, and trying to close the sale. Here's an example of a consultative selling email that doesn't do that. This one focuses on the value that this product offers that for this fictional campaign. The reason why I'm reaching out to you is I'm with TechLight, and we help businesses too, and here's a list of benefits that are offered. I don't know if you're interested in any of those, and that's why I'm reaching out to you. I'll give you a call next week. So not talking about the product, not talking about the company, and not trying to sell the product, communicating in a very consultative way. Similar type message, this one focuses on the pain points, so same type message, just inserting pain points that are specific to this product and specific to that typical buyer. And so these are just a couple of dozens of email templates that are found inside of SalesScripter. Voicemail script. By the way, I just have to share this. I got a voicemail about an hour ago from a salesperson, and this was his voicemail message. He said, "Hello, Michael. This is Dan with company XYZ. I'll insert for anonymous purposes." He said, "I'm with company XYZ. Give me a call back. Phone number is," and he left his phone number and hung up. I mean, what a horrible message. He gave me no reason to call him back. I'm a busy guy. He's a busy guy. We're all busy people. Why am I going to call him back? All he did was say his company name and his phone number and told me to call him back. It's his job to call me back, by the way. If I'm his prospect, he needs to keep calling me until I answer my phone. I'm okay with him leaving me voicemail messages. If he's going to keep calling me and every once in a while leave a voicemail message, what he should do is educate me on that voicemail message, why I should take his call the next time I see his call coming in, or why I maybe should respond to one of his emails that he should follow up his voicemail with. And here's a voicemail message to do that. Hey, the reason why I'm reaching out to you is that we help businesses to improve their website conversion rates, increase web traffic, and generate more leads through their website. Hey, I don't know if we're a good fit for you guys, and that's why I was calling you with a question or two. So, a voicemail script here. Again, produced by SalesScripter. SalesScripter also produces a voicemail follow-up email template that is aligned with this. So it actually says, "Hey, it just left you a voicemail. Again, we help to, blah blah blah." And so there's a value voicemail script, a pain voicemail script, and email templates and whatnot. I talked a little bit about objections. The SalesScripter and our methodology does provide responses for objections. So, like a lot of times, if you're phone prospecting, you're going to get objections of what is this in regards to, like especially from a gatekeeper. So instead of responding directly when someone says what is this in regards to, with a direct answer would be, "I'm trying to schedule a meeting to see if you guys need what I have, or if you guys are using anything for such and such." That basically is a product selling objection response. That basically communicates, I'm trying to sell a product, right? A consultative selling objection response is to say something, gatekeeper says, "What's this in regards to?" Well, the reason why I'm reaching out to you is that we actually work with businesses and we help them to improve their search engine optimization. And you just sit there. You just sit there, and I would almost love for you to try this one thing from this webinar, and shoot me an email and tell me how it went, because it's just almost comical. If you do that to a gatekeeper and you just sit there, you'll they're not going to do what they would normally do, which is to completely shut you down. If they hear you say something that sounds like I'm trying to sell something and I'm a product selling salesperson, they will say we're not interested or put you into a vendor voicemail box. When you say something like this, it's a curveball. They're not necessarily going to say, "Oh, well, we need what you sell." They're just not going to know how to respond. So either they're going to pass you through, or they're going to ask you another question, or whatnot. So, anyways, these are just some of many of objections. Here's some examples of objections. So I mentioned earlier that product selling person, if they hear I'm not interested, they're going to talk about the product more. Here's an example. Someone says, I'm not interested. Hey, I understand, and I want you to know I'm not even trying to sell you anything at this point. I don't even know if you're a good fit. I was just wondering, how do you feel about the current design and layout of your website? At this point, the least likely outcome is for the prospect to say, I told you I'm not interested, and get frustrated. The reason why is because you're sounding like a consultative salesperson, not like a product selling pusher, and you're asking them a question. Now, they might not answer your question. They still might say no, it's pretty good or whatever. What is very likely is that you redirect away from I'm not interested, and they end up answering your question with some sort of answer, and maybe it's a good answer where they say it could be better, and that gives you a reason to continue talking to them. And you could even go for the close, or you can ask them another question, and you get away from their objections in a very consultative way. Now, that's pretty much it. I kind of outlined what consultative selling is compared to product selling. I gave you sort of a path that you can go through to organize your thoughts. You can use SalesScripter to organize your thoughts. I showed you some examples of what a pitch might look like if you're using a consultative selling approach. By the way, all of those templates and those scripts and that sales pitch is produced by SalesScripter if you use SalesScripter to organize your thoughts. But I want to leave you with the four key things to walk away from this are: if you really want to be a consultative selling salesperson, it's all about knowing what questions to ask. And I told you it's not easy. It's more difficult to ask good questions than it is to talk about your product, but that is the key. Make it more about the prospect than about you. Asking good questions is going to help with that. Look for the problems that you help to resolve or solve. So that gets to understanding the pain points that your products help to fix, and it could just be one set of pain points that you keep in mind for everybody. If you want to get sophisticated, knowing that the different buyers that you're going to cross paths with, whether those are different industries, different size of companies, it could be different individuals at a company. So you might sell a product and you could sell to operations and finance. When you talk to a VP of operations versus a VP of finance, they have different interests, and you help to solve different problems, and thus there are different sets of questions that you could ask those different buyers. Now, I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. If some of this seems intimidating, you can do a crawl, walk, run effort, which is let's just get one set of pain points and benefits and questions and get that adopted. And then when you want to go to the next level, you come back and you can build out individual campaigns for the different buyers that you sell to. Product selling is more about talking people into buying what you're selling, and you could almost say that's if you need to be more manipulative or more persuasive, then that is what you need to be good at product selling. Consultative selling is not being pushy or persuasive or manipulative to get people to want what you sell. It's about finding the people that need what you have to offer. And if you're concerned that there's not people out there that need what you have to offer, then maybe it's time to find something else to sell. But there are people out there. Let's just assume that there's a lot of prospects out there that need what you have. You just need to find them. And so one of the ways to find them, there's lots of different sales and marketing tools and tactics to start to get people into your funnel. But once you start crossing paths with these prospects, instead of trying to sell to everybody, instead of going on an appointment, like I know people that have tried to schedule appointments with me that have no business spending their valuable time meeting with me, and they won't ask me questions to determine whether or not I'm worth their time, them being a salesperson, me being a prospect. So why schedule an appointment with anybody that you might have to drive across the city to go to, and then you're going to sit in the meeting with them, and it ends up being two hours out of your schedule, and there's somebody that you should have never met with. Instead, ask that person somewhere along the way, before you begin to invest more time with them, some of your pre-qualifying questions to determine if they are a fit for what you have to offer. So anyways, that's kind of it. My contact info, feel free to email me directly if you have any questions or concerns. And let me take a look.